What's cracking? It's time for XJ Project upgrades. Let me tell you what's going on today. I need to fix the brakes on this thing. When I first got this Jeep, one of the first projects I did was to go over the brake system, or at least the actual brakes. So I put on new rotors and pads, and in the back I did new shoes, spring kit, and a new cylinder, wheel cylinder. And it worked okay for a while, but when I went to Colorado, I started noticing as I was coming down one trail in particular on the Alpine Loop that I was losing some brake power. And it's been a little, for lack of a better word, sketchy since. And so it really came to a head about 2 weeks ago. I took it for a drive here locally, and I was coming down a unpaved hard pack mountain road, and I would say it was probably like a 3 to 5% grade, so it was downhill but not particularly steep. And I put on the brakes and just felt like I was using too much pedal for the amount of stopping power I was getting. So I decided to test it out a little bit more, and so I got up to about 20 miles an hour, put on about half pedal, same sensation. For the amount of stopping power I was getting, I felt like it was too much pedal, like the ratio wasn't quite right. So I did it again, and this time put the brake pedal all the way to the floor, and it brought me to a stop, not as fast as I would have expected it to at that speed on that grade. And the biggest thing is it did not lock up my tires, any of them. Now, I don't have ABS, so if I really get on the brakes, in theory, I should be able to lock them up. So I can lock up the back with the parking brake, emergency brake lever in the cab, but not with the brake pedal. So I came home, did some research, which is a combination of some YouTube videos and reading some forums. And I've decided that my best first move is to upgrade the power brake booster. So here's the one I currently have. This is my, this is an 89 XJ, so it's one of the early models. And this is the single diaphragm brake booster. And starting in 95, they started using a double diaphragm booster, so it's going to have a lot more girth to it. And then of course it's got a different master cylinder, so both of those have to be replaced. Now everyone, all the forums and videos that I looked at, no one indicated that it was necessary to replace the proportioning valve, which on this one is that guy down there. And I'm happy about that because that proportioning valve is quite expensive. So you can pull this whole set of parts off of a vehicle at the junkyard. There's several models that will work. Each of them may require a little more or less modification. I wanted the most direct fit, so the least tinkering around, and the peace of mind in the functionality. So I went ahead and ordered a remanufactured power brake booster from AutoZone, and then off of Amazon I got a compatible master cylinder. Now the one of the modifications that you have to do is that the new master cylinder, the connections are on this side, whereas on this old one the connections are on the passenger side. Connections coming from the proportioning valve. So I just got back from AutoZone where I got a 40-inch length of 3/16 brake line. And I've got a bending tool, so I figure my calculations are that I need about 12 inches for each of these lines. There's two of them. You can see those down there, that one and that one. And so they're going to run over here, but this is also going to be moved back a little bit because the new power brake booster is quite a bit bulkier. than this. So, okay, so I got the old one out, and as is well noted at this point, we've got a little bit of design issue here between that one and that one. So this on the new one is going to have to be drilled out to 5/8 and this side flattened, and that is for the brake light actuator or switch, whatever it is. But the first thing that I need to check is my distance from this wall to the center of that hole needs to match this one, or the brake pedal spacing is going to be off. So that I intentionally ordered the power brake booster off of the 95 model because in theory this should already match, and so all I have to do is flatten and ream this rod. But let's see if my theory proves correct. All right, so I've got that off, and I've noticed a problem. If you look at the power brake booster itself, you see that the area that attached to the firewall has a slant to it, basically kind of leveling that out. If you look at the new one, it also has that slant, but it's in the opposite direction. I'm hoping that's not going to be a problem. And then I just got back from Lowe's. You can see I've got the master cylinder on here, but it did not come with the hardware, and these threads do not match those threads. So I was not able to reuse those bolts. This was an M8 1.25 thread, and so I got that. I need to tighten them down, and then I got the lock washer and regular washer just to make sure they don't come off. So I'm going to get those screwed on, and then the next task I think will be to get the brake lines made, and then the final thing I'm going to go after is getting that modified, because once I start cutting into that, there's no going back, no return. So I'm saving that for last. So it turns out I do need a spacer between the firewall and the power brake booster. It's off by about 1/8 of an inch. So the rod length minus that 1/8 of an inch works out. And also just how it sets in the engine bay. That 1/8 of an inch will give me the relief I need that I don't have to do anything else. So what I did was I had a retractable light under the hood, an extra one, and it had these plastic pieces, one for each side. So I cut out the center and found my holes. 2 of them I got spaced right. 2 of them were not quite right, but nothing a little work with the drill wouldn't fix. And so now what I'm going to do is silicone these together, and then these two right together make up almost a perfect 1/8 of an inch. So this should be an ideal spacer. And there we have it. I've got the plastic and the metal bushing installed, and I've got this flat file down. On this, I started with a file just to get my initial flat, and then I originally went to the Dremel, but that was just going too slow for me, so I upgraded to the good old angle grinder, and I got this probably 75-80% down to where I need it. And then I went back to the file, this one right here, and just finished it off little by little. So I would do about 10 strokes and then put this on. I found the best thing to do to give me the best indication of how much progress I was making was to put the bushings in like this, and then slide that on, and then you see how easy that went on. I do have to tweak it just ever so slightly to get that pin to sink, and you can see that that's my spacing on that, which I think is going to be fine. And so it's just snug enough that it holds this switch in place, but takes some pretty minimal effort to otherwise to put it on. So that's right where I'm comfortable with it. I did already put the 2 outer keepers on. Everything fits perfectly. So you can see that's about how much I took off. And I think I will, let me show you. This is my 2 pieces. I did get some squeeze out, which is fine. I just took it out of the press that I had it in, and it's still a little bit gooey on the outside. It just hasn't cured because it's been in the press. So I'm gonna let it sit out. I think it's compressed as much as it's gonna go. I'm gonna let it sit out and cure the rest of the way, and then I'll just peel off the excess, and that should be ready to go. So next thing I'm gonna do is start working on the brake lines. Okay, we are ready to start installing here. So you can see I've got my handy dandy spacer on there. The silicone is still a little soft, but I did get it off around the edges. But if I get this in tonight, then I think it will seat really nicely. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then you can see I've got the brake switch on, and I did get my brake lines formed. This is the rear one. And I'm gonna put it on first before I put the other one in, because that connection down there at the proportioning valve, with this new power booster, it actually overlaps that a little bit, and so it's going to be really hard to get that installed after the brake booster. So I'm going to put this in first, and then the brake booster, and then I can do the front one, and then I'll probably call it a night because I need to bleed the master cylinder, and then of course bleed the brake system, which now has a little air in it. So just about wrapped up for tonight anyway. All right, so I had to make one adjustment to the front brake line. It was actually a little taller than the rear brake line, so they were hitting each other. So I added this bend right here and then twisted this up, and now they'll ride just over each other like so, and I think that will work just fine.
Good morning. Beautiful day out. Good day to do a little work on the Jeep. I've got about an hour of available time right now, so the first thing I'm going to do is bleed the master cylinder, and I'm going to use this universal master cylinder bleeder kit. And then I've got some Lucas .3 brake fluid that I'm going to use this time. So that should take the available time I've got right now. And then after my engagement here in the early afternoon when I get back, I should be able to get the rest of the brake lines bled and see if our stopping power is improved. So that's the plan for the day. Let's get after it. So I've made a slight error, and hopefully my folly can save you from the same problem. The fitting on this rear attachment doesn't fit the new master cylinder. I should have checked that before I bent everything up. I can fix it on the Jeep so I don't have to take everything out, because I can't get the rear side of this at the proportioning valve off without removing the brake booster. The sad part of that is that this is a factory double flare that's put in, so it's going to be a little nicer than the one that I can do, but I'll have to do it anyway. Fortunately, I have enough room. I can just cut this off right here, exchange the fitting. Actually, the fitting that came on the pipe is the one that I need, and so Anyway, so it goes. But I'll get this cut off and get those switched out and get that flared, and then we should be good to go to bleed the master cylinder. All right, I've got that fitting taken care of. It now does work, and now I've got the lines hooked up. I've got the reservoir filled, and I'm now gonna set up the camera on the tripod to kind of watch this bleeding happen. So here we go. I don't know if you've seen anything. I'm not feeling much in the pedal, but well, something's happening. It's leaking somewhere. Looks like it's leaking out of both fittings. Well, I think that means that it's getting liquid to both fittings. So, okay, we'll try some more. Okay, I can't tell if that's still leaking or not. From inside the cab, I'm not seeing anything drip, but I am seeing okay, it looks like it's going right there. Okay, that's why I can't see it drip, because it's going down the bottom part of the master cylinder over to this and dripping down. So, I guess the next question is to see if these two lines are actually pushing fluid. Which is part of the reason I have the camera set up, so I can go back and watch and see what's happening with these two. I can see the lines flexing when I push on the brake. That's not telling me how much fluid's going through, and I wish these lines were clear so that I could see if there's any bubbles going through. Yeah, just looking down there, we've got full-on drips happening, and I'm guessing it's this line because this fitting didn't seem like it was an exact fit. But you know, there's only so much I can do about that. It was the only one that was even close. So okay, I'm gonna pump it a few more times. All right, I'm gonna call it at that. Now here's the tricky part. Getting these out and getting these on.
without losing a lot of fluid. And since this stuff is a little bit corrosive, I'm gonna go ahead and glove up. Well, this one is the harder one to get started, so I'm gonna do that one second. Let's go ahead and do this one because I think it's the one that's leaking worse anyway. So get this ready. That actually wasn't as bad as I thought. That's leaking all over the place. I should have thought that through, I guess. My bad on that one. Get something to wipe that up. Should have planned ahead on that too. Novice. Okay, there's that. Okay, let's see if I can get this. I'm not sure that's actually those threads are lined up just right yet. I think this was the 13. Oh. Part of the fun of new lines is they're pulling on this in a couple different directions. Make it, or maybe. Let me get this other one in because I know. Now I've got the added disadvantage of having really slick hands. Makes it hard to get these even started. Okay, this one started. We're going. Now I know what some of you are gonna say. I should be using a that specialty tool for these. I don't have one. No one nearby me has one. And since I don't plan on doing this really more than maybe one more time, it's not worth my while to go get one. So you'll just have to tolerate me using a regular old box end. Okay. I believe that one's on. Now, let's see here. I'm kind of wondering if these are a different thread. I want to be careful I don't strip that. I tested this one and thought that it went in okay, but it sure doesn't want to go in now. Ooh, maybe. Nope. Oh, nope, that one's still leaking. Just saw that drip. Let's see if I can get that a little tighter. And then of course this front one. Sorry, I just hit the camera with my head. Put that on for now. Okay, well, let's try this a little bit more here. See, I'm seeing, I don't know if you can see that, but I've got a little bit of, I think, like the other one, I'm thinking this might be a different end. I'm sure it's not that, because that's too small. It shouldn't be that one. Nope, that's too small. So I've got one more option that it could be. Okay, so this came, this is a plug that came with the with this kit, and this is the big plug that it had, which is marked M12 by 1. And this, I don't think is that. Definitely not. Those threads don't match up. Okay. So, yet again, the reason I thought that this matched, number one, I did start this when I checked the other one, and it didn't, I thought I got enough threads going on it that it was the right one. And then secondly, I put this plug in the old master cylinder and got it to thread in. So between those two things, I was under the impression that these were the same, which they, at this point, obviously are not. So I think I'm gonna have to get a new end for this, which means I'm gonna have to crimp one of these one more time. I don't remember or not. I'm gonna go check. But I think some people have said that they use some thread tape on these. So if this keeps leaking, I may do that. Just put a wrap around it with an appropriate thread tape. But for right now, this is plugged, so I can go do my afternoon appointment. So I'm gonna have to wrap this up at the moment. Okay, so here are the updates. The fitting on the front of the master cylinder is an M12. The plug that came with the master cylinder stated it was an M12.20, which is the thread count. However, at all the auto parts stores, they have it listed as M12 1.0, which is the M12 and then the length. So I was a little hesitant when I finally found a store that had one, which took me 3 tries. But I did get one and took a chance on it because I figured perhaps they don't list the thread count because there's only one option. The one that I got from O'Reilly's fit, and it sealed up beautifully. That one is holding. The one in the rear, I ended up having to cut off the flare and do it again because it was leaking profusely when I first did the master cylinder bench bleed. So I refitted that one, and it's drastically improved, but there may still be a little tiny leak coming out of it. I'm going to give it a day or two and see if I notice anything. So I got it all hooked up, bled all the lines, and then just took it for a test drive, which was just to my closest O'Reilly's to return the flaring tool. And my initial observation was that there wasn't that much difference. But on the way back, after I returned the tool, I really am noticing quite a bit more stopping power. And my observation is, I think this is just something I need to get used to a little bit because the brake pedal now has a little different feel to it. But about half to 2/3 of the pedal travel doesn't really do much as far as slowing down or applying any brakes. But the last third or so, it really clamps down. So when I really press down on it, there's definitely significant improved stopping power. I still didn't get my wheels to lock up. I didn't try too hard because I was on pavement driving through town. But I did get stuff that was in the cab to slide forward, which is an improvement because it wasn't doing that before. So definitely more stopping power. I might need to bleed the lines one more time because there could be still a little bit of air in there that needs to kind of work through. So we'll see what happens. Let me drive it around a little bit, hit some dirt trails so I can compare it with my last dirt trail experience, and then I'll give you kind of the final update and see where it goes from there. So here's what's currently going on with the brake system. When I put the new power booster in, I of course checked to see that the brake lights were working. And initially they did, and I thought it was great and good to go. The next time I drove it, which was like 2 weeks later, it was at night and I was headed to O'Reilly's, and I didn't see the red glow behind me when I was pushing on the brake pedal. Now fortunately, the route that I take to my local O'Reilly's is kind of a back way, and there's not a lot of traffic, especially the time of day I was out. So an accident happening wasn't really my concern. When I got to O'Reilly's in the parking lot, I got out and pushed on the brake with my foot while I kind of looked around the edge of the vehicle, and the lights did start coming on. So I thought, well, maybe I just couldn't see them from my vantage point driving. Hard to say. So on the way home, I got to a point that had particularly reflective material behind me, and I pushed on the brakes, and I could see that the lights would go on and then they would go off while the pedal was still on. And so I would push the pedal a little harder and they would go back on, and then they would go off again. They'd stay on maybe 1 or 2 seconds at the most. So I've driven the Jeep one other time since then. It's been 2 or 3 months since I put the booster in, and this week I finally, with the weather turning, thinking that I might need my 4-wheel drive a little more often, I decided to figure this problem out. And here's what I have discovered. So here is my old power booster, and this hole right here needs to be a 5/8 hole, and on the new power booster it's not that big, so you have to drill it out. I used a step bit from Harbor Freight, and when I got to the 5/8 step, it went dull on me, and so I had to finish reaming out that hole with a rat tail file. And I got it to where it was a nice tight fit for the plastic bushing that goes in there. This flat side that I got ground down, I got it to where I thought it was just right, and I still think it's just right. Here's what I think the problem is with the brake lights. Here is the plastic bushing. You can see that easily slides in and out. This is a very forgiving 5/8 hole, whereas on my new one, this is a very tight fit. I have to kind of press this in. It does go in, and it does fit the metal bushing just fine, but this, you can see there, has a little bit of play forwards and backwards. My new one doesn't have that. Here's what I think the problem is. With this installed, in the back side, one moment. There we go. Okay, with that installed, when you push on this, if I can do this one-handed, you can see that it moves and depresses that switch before it actually starts pushing the rod. What I think is happening in the new one is there is no give right here, and so the only way it engages the rod is if this turns, twists this way, which it's not doing very often. So what I need to do is drill out this hole to this loose 5/8 so that I have that amount of play right there so that the switch can engage. So I have ordered a 5/8 drill bit. I could have got one locally, but they were the same price, and the one I found online was a Bosch brand, and I am a Bosch guy, so I went with that one. It should be here tomorrow, and when I get that reamed out the rest of the way, if that is successful, I will let you know. All right, my 5/8 drill bit arrived today as I expected. I took a few minutes, got the hole reamed out on the power brake booster, and got it hooked up, and the result is I have brake lights that stay on. So they seem to be functioning totally normal. I just lightly touch the brake and they come on before engaging the brake. And then of course, as you can see, they are staying on. So happy day, that problem solved.